better look deep. This occult stuff is real.
I know my rights. I know my rights. I'm a child of God. I know my rights. Dang it.
Douglas.
Yeah.
Look, I can explain. I'm sorry. I need to see you. Meet me in Fuller's office.
I know the truth.
Where are you?
You could call it the end of the world.
Unloading. Reconnaissance planes first, next hauling equipment. The Marine Corps Weasels. Heavy-duty Caterpillars and trucks, 40 in all. Here are no port facilities, but the Navy shows its self-sufficiency as it did throughout the war in operating at sea without bases or with improvised bases. Here are no docks or roads, yet all freight aboard 3 heavily laden ships is hauled 2 miles over the ice up to Little America. The call goes out for dynamite crews, Navy's trained demolition teams, seasoned on enemy beaches. CBs and their bulldozers follow, smooth out the road for the big cats. In 2 hours, they bridge crevasses 100 feet deep. And so 10,000 tons of gear, brought down by the cargo ships, start moving up to Little America. Work goes steadily forward. CBs, with all hands helping, use every one of the 24 hours of daylight in the South Pole summer. Caterpillars with snowshoe oversized treads accomplish in hours the work that in old days hundreds of dogs could do only in weeks. Airstrips, smoothed out with drags, take high priority. Food dumps grow steadily. Here is the favorite hangout of the veteran husky, Ricky. Born at Little America 12 years before, knockdown Wanigans grow magically, and the Air Headquarters Quonset is ready. And now, the ordered streets of a tent city that is Little America the Fourth.
Let's pretend we don't exist. Let's pretend we're in Antarctica. Let's pretend we don't exist. Let's pretend we're in Antarctica.
Admiral Byrd says goodbye and good luck to an over-ice expedition which is to probe deep into the Rockefeller Mountains, 300 miles southeast.
Do we have the full screen of the buildings? It's 30 Rockefeller Plaza. This is 30 Rock, NBC building, okay? And this is a multi-block, Radio City Music Hall is over here, Simon & Schuster building is over here. Across the street is part of Rockefeller Plaza.
Two LVTs hauling supply sledges strike out into the white darkness, their mileage checked by bicycle wheel counters astern. In the mountain rocks, they will seek minerals and ancient petrified vegetation. Each plane is serviced on exact schedule with 1,200 gallons of high-test gas and with preheated oil tested to function at 80 below. A pressure tank, especially designed for operations in deep cold, pumps the oil into the planes. Daily flights begin. Each plane has a definite sector to explore, a definite timetable, a definite radio report schedule. While the weather holds, flights operate around the clock.
Aboard the destroyer Bronson, he sails close in to Mount Erebus, 14,000 feet above the sea, an active volcano near the South Pole.
recording, evaluating, mapping. Plateaus, mountain ranges with peaks 20,000 feet above sea level. The trimetrigon lenses, clicking overlapping exposures every 3 seconds, photograph from horizon to horizon. Coal, a mountain of coal. Byrd later declares Antarctic mines, if once tapped, could supply the world's coal needs for centuries.
Our Western group, flying hundreds of air hours, mapped the 4,000-mile Sunset Coast, made the amazing discovery of warm land in Antarctica. The universal white is turned to chocolate brown, dotted with blue. A cameraman goes into action. 300 square miles of land without snow. Land that might be in New Mexico or Arizona. Pictures alone will prove Bunger has discovered a warm oasis in the shadow of the pole. The astounding, undreamed-of fact is that they are over a chain of warm water lakes whose shores, except for small patches, are free of ice and snow. Commander Bunger circles the largest lake in sight, 5 miles long. He comes in to make a landing. Water temperatures must be recorded. Samples taken. He finds the water fresh, the temperature 38 degrees Fahrenheit. On the shores are vast deposits of coal and of minerals of the utmost importance to civilization.
This is incredible. They found decades ago a warm place on Antarctica.
Unless we learn otherwise, it will be prudent to suppose that the next ice age could begin to bite at any time.
In the 1970s, there was a big scare about global cooling. Climate experts were worried that we might be headed towards a new global ice age. Time magazine reported in 1974 that, quote, the atmosphere has been growing gradually cooler for the past 3 decades. The trend shows no indication of reversing.
John Coleman is the founder of the Weather Channel. He was also the first weatherman ever on Good Morning America, and he is currently weatherman at KUSI News in San Diego.
Well, I've been listening to all the global warming talk for a long time and posting material about global warming on our website. But finally, the crescendo of global warming myth, nonsense, exploded in my head, and I had to write a real rant. And all I was doing was telling you the truth as best I know it. Grin, you got to make a living, first of all. So you spent 10 years becoming a PhD in meteorology. You got a research job, and you decide you're going to research the effect of human activity on global climate. And if you were to put out a research report that said not much and it doesn't seem too bad, you probably wasted all your... And I found out it was bogus science. It wasn't real. The numbers had been massaged. The whole thing had been created. What bothered me was that the other scientists had accepted it. Well, why did they possibly do that? And I think the real answer to that question is that they all have an agenda, an environmental and political agenda that said, let's pile on here. We're all going to make a lot of money. We're going to get research grants. We're going to get awards. We're going to become famous.
But they that will be rich fall into temptation and a snare, and into many foolish and hurtful lusts, which drown men in destruction and perdition. For the love of money is the root of all evil, which while some coveted after, they have erred from the faith, and pierced themselves through with many sorrows.
In fact, it's a quite new discovery for us that the Earth can turn so cold so fast. The problem is, would that happen again to us right now?
CO2 does not control the weather. God controls the weather.
It was called Operation Deep Freeze, and tonight a 5 on Your Side investigation reveals it may have exposed thousands to radiation.
What did an estimated 15,000 share in common that's now suspected of slowly poisoning them with radiation? And our investigation found others across the country, all Navy veterans who either died or are fighting cancer, and all shared one thing. They all served at McMurdo Station, a U.S. Navy base in Antarctica, and it was powered by this, a portable nuclear plant.
At one time, I heard the siren. Something happened up there, but, you know, we weren't made aware of it.
In fact, we found 438 malfunctions from 1964 through 1972. The Navy's final operating report also found leaking water surrounding the reactor and hairline cracks in the reactor liner as early as 1964.
I was amazed at how many times they had malfunctions. You know, we didn't have an accident, we had a malfunction.
The same report found contaminated soil was loaded into dump trucks, hauled away uncovered, and loaded onto cargo ships for disposal in the United States.
One thing I learned in my investigation was that there are many military bases on Antarctica representing many different nations. I was surprised by how much activity is on Antarctica.
For then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor ever shall be. And except those days should be shortened, there should no flesh be saved. But for the elect's sake, those days shall be shortened. Then, if any man shall say unto you, Lo, here is Christ, or there, believe it not. For there shall arise false Christs and false prophets, and shall show great signs and wonders, insomuch that if it were possible, they shall deceive the very elect. Behold, I have told you before. Wherefore, if they shall say unto you, Behold, he is in the desert, go not forth. Behold, he is in the secret chamber, believe it not. For as the lightning cometh out of the east, and shineth even unto the west, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. For wheresoever the carcass is, there will the eagles be gathered together. Immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens shall be shaken. And then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven. And then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn, and they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And he shall send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. Ye are from beneath, I am from above. Ye are of this world, I am not of this world. I said therefore unto you that ye shall die in your sins, for if ye believe not that I am he, ye shall die in your sins.
The Antarctic Treaty was negotiated over 50 years ago. There are currently 50 nations which are parties to the treaty, and the treaty governs Antarctica and the Southern Ocean.
This history has been banned from being taught in the government schools. Sometime after the Great Flood, civilization re-emerged on the face of the earth. A people that had no city of their own were in bondage in Egypt, serving the rulers, performing the burdens of the Egyptians. The Lord God had mercy on those people, freeing them from their masters. With the strength of the hand of the Lord, he brought those people out of bondage.
Nations which are a party to the Antarctic Treaty System hold an annual meeting.
The training program for New Zealand Antarctic parties is held annually at Waihuru Military Camp and on the steep slopes of nearby Mount Ruapehu. Here the men receive their introduction to living and working in Antarctica. Of first importance is understanding the correct use of clothing that's issued. Frostbite strikes quickly. A man's life can depend on being correctly and adequately clothed. Therefore, it's essential that new expeditioners pay close attention to the expert advice being given. Fire is still the greatest single hazard in Antarctica. This is due to the combination of an exceptionally dry climate and prevalent high winds, with man's necessary use of various types of fuel-burning heaters and electrically operated equipment. Once it has a hold, fire can be disastrous. The cold temperatures prohibit the use of many normal methods of fire control. Large quantities of water, for instance, are not obtainable. It's essential that all measures be taken to prevent fire and fight it. The men are instructed in fighting various types of fires using proven equipment similar to the type provided at Scott Base. Smoke or fumes can cause suffocation. Mouth-to-mouth resuscitation may be necessary. Experienced men lecture on the do's and don'ts of living and surviving in Antarctica. Field work continues to play an important part of the operations. Specially constructed tents are erected. Operating methods and procedures of radio communication are fully shown using Antarctic field radio. Bob Thompson and Ken McBride of Antarctic Division watch as the men are split into small groups to receive instruction in snow and ice craft. This expert instruction is given by the experienced men who are members of the field parties for the approaching season. Following further specialized training in their particular fields, men are quartered at the RNZAF base at Wigram when awaiting their scheduled flight to Antarctica. Clothing is sorted out for storage in the aircraft, and survival clothing is packed in a light bag to be kept with each man during the flight. US Navy and RNZAF aircraft leave from Christchurch International Airport. Flights can take from 7 to 10 hours. The men report to the deep freeze counter for checking and weighing in. Maximum allowable baggage weights must be strictly observed. Excess baggage may have to await alternative transport. Boarding the aircraft takes some time with a full complement of passengers, but soon all is ready for takeoff. Once aloft, ditching instructions are given and the use of survival equipment demonstrated. In addition to the Super Constellation, Hercules C-130 aircraft are also used to transport personnel between New Zealand and Antarctica. On arrival at Williams Field, 4 miles south of Scott Base, new arrivals are greeted by personnel from Scott Base. Baggage is loaded into a small sledge hauled by a Swedish-built snow track. These vehicles are normally used for transport to Scott Base. Mount Erebus dominates Ross Island, where on the southern tip of Pram Point lies Scott Base. White Island and the pressure ridges of the McMurdo ice shelf are the main features to be seen south from the base. The prefabricated huts at Scott Base are interconnected with covered ways. From the laboratory to the garage, men are able to walk with ease, completely sheltered from cold, winds and blizzards. The hangar, now used as a bulk store, is the only large building not included in the covered way system. Scott Base was originally built here in January 1957 under the supervision of experts from Ministry of Works. Additions and improvements in subsequent seasons have increased the number of main base buildings from 7 to 11. The newcomers arrive at the front of the base. They're taken inside and along the covered way to E Hut, the administration building, where they are met by the leader. A day at Scott Base commences with being woken by the man on night watch duty. Then, down to the ablution block for a wash. Remembering not to waste water. Water is difficult to make in Antarctica, but cleanliness is still important. Each hut is equipped with a cold porch to assist in retaining the warm air and for fire safety. Entering the mess hut through the cold porch, we find breakfast is prepared. Just a matter of help yourself. And it seems these people are making the most of it. Large neoprene bladder tanks and metal bulk fuel tanks store the diesel oil. Lifeblood of the 65 kilowatt generators that supply electric power for the many varied requirements of the base. The heat produced in the generator radiators is air circulated through ducting to neighboring rooms. Thus enabling work to be done in warm comfort of 60 degrees Fahrenheit temperatures. Heat exchangers in the exhaust system of the generators and a diesel burning boiler combine to heat water which is piped to heat snow melters and also provide hot water for washing. By all these methods, fullest possible use is made of all the readily available sources of heat. Electrically controlled oil-burning heaters are located in the cold porch of each hut. These are refueled and checked regularly. The warm air is circulated via ducting through the rooms of each hut. Stale air is expelled and a proportion of fresh air drawn in from outside. Sledges require regular attention. And so do the dogs that pull them. Carefully weighed portions of seal meat or pemmican must be fed to these huskies to keep them in top form for travel and in good condition to survive the rigors of Antarctica. Once harnessed, the dogs are eager to move off.
Right up there, Johnny.
And once on the run, make an impressive sight from all angles.
Right up there, right away. That's the boy. Right up there.
In recent years, mechanical means of transport has largely displaced the popular dog teams. Numerous types of vehicles are necessary to meet varying requirements and conditions of Antarctic travel. The Swedish-built Snow Track is one of the most successful over-snow vehicles in use. The motor toboggan is more popularly known as the Tin Dog. Its simple and reliable operation, combined with good speed and traction, has now made it the choice of small field parties covering long distances. This snowcat was one of those used in Fuchs' crossing of Antarctica. It now plays an important part in the transport requirement at Scott Base. Regular maintenance of all vehicles is carried out in the well-equipped workshop. The study of meteorology is important to scientific research and also provides assistance to all outside operations. Data is taken and recorded by personnel outside and also recorded on instruments inside the laboratory. The laboratory is well equipped. Most of the instruments record data necessary in the study of the various geophysical sciences. Strange as it may seem, the making or obtaining of fresh water is one of the greatest problems encountered when living in Antarctica. The most common method is to melt ice or snow. This is the method used at Scott Base, but requires a considerable amount of tough work to keep the snow melters supplied with large ice blocks. These blocks are obtained by picking, drilling, power sawing, any way at all that brings results. Then the blocks are loaded into a sledge and towed back to Scott Base. Automatic fire detectors fitted to the ceilings of the huts and manual switching methods are integrated to operate alarms and indicators on the central fire detector board in the mess hut. From here, the location of the fire is transmitted through the base. Escape hatches are provided in all huts as an additional and ready means of escape. During winter in particular, but at all times following snow or blizzards, it's essential that doorways and hatches be cleared of drift snow, thus making an escape possible. Smoke and fumes can hinder firefighting or rescue operations. The donning of breathing apparatus may be necessary. It's essential that all people accommodated at Scott Base become fire conscious. Prevention is much simpler and effective than any cure in Antarctica, but fire drills are called for regularly. A thorough search of the hut is made to ensure there are no victims. All rescued people are taken to where they can breathe fresh air as soon as possible. Perhaps the most important man at Scott Base is the cook, and essential to his requirements are good food, adequate storage, and a good stove for cooking and baking. Rubbish disposal is a most essential but not easy task. Multi-wall bags are used for this purpose and conveyed by trailer and tractor to the local dump. This usually breaks up annually and the rubbish goes to sea or is pushed through the tide crack in the ice. A heated drain provides the means for disposing of liquid waste. Full postal facilities are provided by the office at Scott Base. Thousands of stamps are sold annually, not only for normal postal requirements, but also the philatelists and souvenir hunters. Radio-telephone communication with all parts of the world can be made from Scott Base. Americans, too, use this New Zealand facility extensively. Radio is the only method of communicating with the field parties and is essential to the safety and successful operation of these remote groups. Mount Erebus is the most active volcano in Antarctica. The nearby Ross Sea and McMurdo ice shelf are playgrounds for hundreds of seals. But amongst these seal holes and the ridges of pressure-formed ice lurks danger for man. All looks well on the surface, but often this is only a thin layer hiding crevasses and holes. An unwary or ill-equipped person could easily fall through to the sea below. A rescue party here demonstrates a crevasse rescue operation. The gear is hauled to the accident area by man-hauled sledge. The victim is trapped several feet below the surface. The rescue team ropes up, then lowers a rope into the crevasse. The victim, fortunately, doesn't appear to be seriously injured and is able to attach himself to the rope, and slowly but surely climbs to safety. Meanwhile, on the surface, the rescuers hold the ropes fast. Any slip now could be disastrous. Finally, the rescued man is pulled clear, placed on the sledge and hauled to the waiting vehicle. The large Nodwell vehicle transports the injured man back to Scott Base. He is transferred to the Land Rover for fast transport over the formed road that links the New Zealand base with the American base at McMurdo, just 2 miles away. McMurdo Station is a large logistic base, the main United States base in Antarctica. Over 1,000 men live here during the summer, and some 250 winter over. Most of these are Navy men who are here to support the U.S. scientists at the various bases and in their field operations. The full facilities of the newly completed hospital at McMurdo have been made available for use by the New Zealanders. X-ray equipment, an operating theatre and a dental surgery are included in this well-equipped building. When work is over for the day at Scott Base, men relax and enjoy themselves in the mess hut. Serious discussions to light-hearted yarns are usually the main topics. But often some musical instrument is produced and a good old sing-song develops. Now it's midnight. Only the night watchman remains up and alert. The sun dips low on the southern horizon, marking the end of another Antarctic day at Scott Base.